Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar presented by Quimbee Bar Review. During today's session, we'll be talking all about trusted tips and strategies for passing the bar exam. We're going to get started here in just a moment to allow time for everyone to join us. But today's webinar will start with a presentation from Brenly, our Bar Review Director here at Quimbee. And at the end, we'll dedicate some time to answering your questions live. So please be sure to put your questions as you have them in the Q&A feature, and either one of our awesome team members, Shannon or Deanna, who are working in the background here, will answer you directly, or we'll address it during the live Q&A. And if we don't get to your question, don't worry, we'll provide you with our contact information for you to reach out to us after the webinar. All right, with that, I'm going to hand things over to Brenly, who is going to get our presentation started today. Take it away, Brenly.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. So first, we're just going to go over our agenda for the day. So we'll start off with a little introduction about Quimbee, also about the bar exam, how that's all structured for the UBE, California, and Florida. We'll go over some before bar exam prep tips, some during bar exam prep tips specific to each component of the bar exam. We'll also cover some exam day tips, a short intro to Quimbee Bar Review Plus, and then, like Emily said, we'll have a live Q&A portion as well. And as Emily said, you can use the Q&A feature at any time during the presentation to ask questions. So ask them as they come up. Okay, so what is Quimbee? Quimbee is an all-in-one platform for lifelong legal learning. So we have 4 different products. We have Quimbee Study Aids, which help you prepare for class and exams in law school. We also have an MPRE review course to help you prepare to take the multi-state professional responsibility exam. We have a bar review course as well to prepare you for the bar exam. And finally, after you become a licensed attorney, you'll need to complete continuing legal education. We have a CLE subscription as well, so you can get all the credits you need to keep your license active. So we're going to launch a quick poll to ask, which bar exam are you planning on taking? So the options will be UBE jurisdiction, Florida, California, or other. If you're not sure which, if your state has adopted the UBE, we're actually going to pull up a slide that has a map of all of the jurisdictions that have adopted the UBE, so you can use that as a guide. All right, it looks like we are showing roughly half of you are going to take the UBE, 30% California, 8% Florida, and a couple others in the other states. So first, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what the bar exam is. So for the uniform bar exam, there are 3 different components. There's the MBE, which is the multi-state bar exam. It's a multiple choice exam, 200 multiple choice questions covering 7 subjects. It's worth 50% of your grade. There's also the multi-state essay exam, which has 6 essays covering some of those MBE subjects and sometimes some additional subjects. There are 5 additional subjects tested on the MEE. And finally, there's the multi-state performance test, which is essentially 2 closed universe writing assignments. With those writing assignments, they'll give you a set of facts to work with, as well as law to apply. You don't have to memorize any law for it, but it's still pretty tricky. And there are 2 of those total in the UBE. So next, moving on to the California bar exam. A lot of you here are going to be taking that one. As you can see for this exam, you still have the MBE, still worth 50% of your grade. It's completely identical to the MBE that the UBE uses for multiple choice, but you also have 5 California specific essays and 1 performance test worth 14% of your grade. So just a little more detail on that. For those 5 essays that you have, they can also test you on the MBE subjects, but some additional California specific subjects, community property, professional responsibility, that will all be California specific law. You have 60 minutes for each essay. And then like in the UBE, you also have a performance test on the California bar, but there's just 1 of them, not 2. And then for the Florida bar exam, the breakdown is sort of similar, a little bit different. You still have the MBE, 50% of your grade, but you only have 3 Florida essays to work through, which are worth 25% of your grade. And then Florida actually has its own state-specific multiple choice questions. There are 100 of those, and they're worth 25% of your grade. So like the essays on the other bar exams, the Florida essays can cover MBE subjects, but they might also cover some Florida-specific law, family law, professional responsibility, those sorts of subjects. And then, like I said, Florida has its own multiple choice questions. There are 100 of those total on the Florida bar. Okay, so, and the Florida bar doesn't include a performance test, by the way. So now we're going to launch our second poll, which is, when are you planning on taking the bar exam? I'll give you just a couple seconds to answer that. Okay, it looks like about half of you are planning on taking the bar in July of next year. We've got another huge chunk taking the bar this February. Good luck to you guys. And then later on, fewer students taking it later on. So we have mostly 3Ls here today. That's great. Okay. So we will now turn to some tips. We'll start with some tips for before you actually pick your bar review course. So when you're picking your bar review course, it's a really huge decision. It can be hard to do. So here are just some kind of guidelines to be thinking about when you're making that decision. The first thing is your schedule. Think about when you're going to be studying for the bar exam. Are you going to be working? Are you going to have other obligations or responsibilities during that time? How many hours are you going to be able to dedicate per day, per week? Everybody has a different schedule, but bar prep can really be a full-time job. Most students will graduate in May and then take a full-time 10-week course. Most bar review companies offer this full-time course. It's usually like 8 to 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. It's pretty intensive. And of course, there are students out there that that's not going to work for, because you have to work or take care of family members. So in that case, you should look out for bar review companies that have a part-time schedule. Quimbee has one, and a couple others do as well. Also think about your learning preferences. So as you progress throughout law school, you've probably figured out what works for you and what doesn't in terms of how you learn. You should pick a course that teaches you in a way that you're comfortable with and that's actually effective for you. So that might be lecture focused, or maybe you really like outlines, or maybe a deciding factor will actually be how long you can pay attention to a video. But no matter what, we really recommend that you look at the way the courses are set up and pick one that fits for you. You're going to be spending a ton of time with your course, and how much coursework you complete is a huge determining factor in your chances of success. So you really want to make sure that you're picking something that you're comfortable with and that works for you instead of against you. Also, think about some of the features that you might consider important. So take a look at the exam components for your jurisdiction, and then think about how you did in law school with those different types of testing. Do you struggle with essays? Then maybe you should pick a course that has unlimited essay grading. If you struggle with multiple choice, see how many and what types of questions different bar review courses use. How many questions are written by the company? How many questions are real MBE questions from past bar exams? And how do you do with time management? That's a big struggle for lots of students. If it is for you too, then you should look into how many simulated exams are available in the courses you're looking at so that you can really nail down your timing. You should also think about price. Studying for the bar exam can get really expensive. There are a lot of different things that factor into cost. You know, how much it costs to register for the bar. Do you need to travel to take the exam? Do you need a hotel? Have you put aside funds for just, living expenses during bar prep? Picking a course that fits within your budget is really important. This might mean purchasing earlier and spreading out payments with a payment plan, or, keeping an eye on the different promotions that bar review companies run and making sure you take advantage of times when there are discounts. Okay, so now let's switch to kind of some during prep tips. The first thing I would say is that it's really important to trust your learning preferences. So we talked about this a bit a second ago, but during law school, you've probably developed a system for studying. For example, me personally, I'm a huge handwritten notes girl, but some of my friends didn't like handwriting their notes. They liked typing their notes, and one of my friends didn't even take notes, didn't like doing that. Some friends made flashcards for themselves. Some learned best by trying to explain legal concepts to their non-lawyer mom. You get the picture. We all have totally different learning styles and preferences, but you can actually bring your individual learning preferences to bar prep. We encourage that. You know yourself best, so while we recommend using a bar review course to structure your schedule and provide you with the material you need, you can also personalize the experience to maximize your chances of success. You also should think about using a growth mindset. So when you start studying, you might feel like you aren't grasping the material as quickly as you'd like. That's totally normal, but some students allow themselves to become discouraged by this, and that really puts a damper on the whole experience. You don't learn as well when you're not feeling hopeful. The reality is, if you just keep going forward with a hopeful attitude, you'll find that the kinks are actually going to start to work themselves out just as you show up. Another tip is to tackle hard tasks earlier in the day. So sometimes, take a look at your tasks for the day. If you need to, reorder your study days so that you begin with the tasks that require the most energy. For example, you might want to work on multiple choice questions and essays first thing in the day instead of last. And then when you're feeling more tired, you can complete lower energy tasks like watching videos or lectures. You should also take breaks and be sensitive to your burnout threshold. So no matter how you cut it, bar prep is going to take a ton of time and commitment. If you have a day where you feel like you're banging your head against the wall, you probably need a break, and it's not going to be effective for you to continue. Take some time to do something that will be truly rejuvenating for you, like going for a walk, calling a loved one, or making a nice meal. You'll be able to come back at it fresh, which will make it easier for you to learn. You should also really focus on practice. Studies have shown time and time again that practicing is the most effective and efficient way to learn new material and new skills. Also happens to be the least boring way to learn. Listening to hours of lectures really isn't that helpful, no matter what anybody tells you. It would really serve you to pick a course that maximizes the amount of time you spend practicing the law that you're learning, using analysis and application. While you practice, make sure you take the time to self-assess too, so that you can learn from mistakes you make along the way. So now we're going to go to some tips that are more specific to the different components of the bar exam. So starting with the MBE, how can you put yourself on a path towards success there? So I'm going to walk you through some MBE specific tips. The first is to learn the law. As you begin preparing for the MBE, your main focus is going to be on this, just learning the law. You'll use your bar course's instructional videos, outlines, and practice questions to master the law. And in this early phase, you'll often be working through questions that cover a single subject, such as, just property. It's just a property quiz. Starting with a single subject like that can really help you master the law bit by bit. When you first start taking questions too, it's helpful to use a question answer pattern. So what I mean by that is, when you're taking a quiz, sometimes you have the opportunity to review answers after every single question versus taking all the questions at once and then reviewing all the answers afterwards. At the beginning, it's definitely more effective to use the question answer pattern. Using this pattern helps you focus on self-assessment, and you'll be able to autopsy each question right after you do it. Speaking of autopsying questions, let's talk about what that means. So it means focusing on self-assessment during practice. You can read the answer explanation, then try to figure out why you answered the question wrong if you did. Was it that you were unsure of the law? That would be a cue to go back and review the subtopic tested. But lots of times knowledge of the law isn't actually the issue. It may just be that you misread the facts, or you jumped to conclusions about which answer would be right, or you were experiencing a little bit of test anxiety. That's totally fine. Don't dupe yourself into thinking you can't improve. You don't want to get discouraged if you get a lot of questions wrong. Just review your performance with an eye to improvement, look for patterns in your mistakes, and then develop a plan to shore up those weaknesses. Finally, mastering timing and mixed sets. So as you progress throughout bar prep, you'll also start to work on your timing. Time management is so important on the MBE. It may seem like 3 hours is a ton of time, but it's really not when you have 100 questions to get through. You have about 1.8 minutes to answer each question, which is not a ton of time. So during bar prep, you'll work on pacing when you take longer question sets. For example, in our course, we have 6 full-length diagnostic exams that are each like one MBE session, and that will help you work on that timing. And as you get deeper into preparation too, you're also going to focus more on mixed subject MBE practice. So, instead of a quiz that's just testing you on property, it's going to be like property, torts, contracts, CivPro, all the things. And when you're facing those mixed subject sets, it's really important to be able to discern the subject and specific issue tested, because it's not going to be labeled on the bar exam. So on the next slide, we'll dive into how to actually read MBE questions and hone in on the issues tested. Okay, so first thing first, you want to master your approach to the question. So it's counterintuitive, but reading the question from top to bottom isn't actually the best plan of attack. Instead, you want to actually read the question prompt first. So that usually comes at the end of the facts, right before the answer options. You're going to immediately glean clues on what's being tested, and then you can mentally pull up applicable rules before you start diving into the facts and answer options. This thought process will help you zero in on the right answer. Next, you'll read the fact pattern. Things to keep in mind while you're reading the fact pattern are that every fact matters. So if you see a fact that you don't think is relevant, you might want to give the prompt a second look. You're probably missing something. And also, never assume facts not stated. The MBE is always going to give you everything that you need to know, and it's not going to have you deduce an unstated fact. Next is analysis. So MBE questions require application of law to fact. Take a moment to analyze how the rule that's being tested applies before you actually dive into the answer options. And then finally, reviewing the answer options. So what you're going to want to do is try to eliminate incorrect answer options first. Often the right answer on the MBE doesn't feel like it's perfect. It's just the best answer. So sometimes the best way to find the best answer is to start off by eliminating obviously wrong ones. And then whichever answer options remain, give yourself a minute to really, think about them and think about which one is the best one. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit and do a sample MBE style question. I'm not going to read the question out for you, but if you read the question prompt first, like we suggest, you can see that it's about felony murder. So go ahead and take a couple minutes to read through this, and we're actually going to launch a poll where you can indicate which answer you think is the right answer option. Okay, it looks like most of you have put in your answer options. Take a second and do that if you haven't already. But so far it looks like answer option A is leading. Answer options C and D are also a little bit popular. Answer option B a little bit less so. So let's switch to that next slide and see which is the correct answer. Okay, so answer option A was actually correct. And let's talk through that explanation together. So as you can see here, under the traditional definition of felony murder, a death occurring during the commission of a robbery or in the defendant's immediate flight from the commission of the robbery constitutes felony murder, which is exactly what happened here. The officer died while chasing the defendant during his, running away period. So the defendant would be guilty of felony murder. Answer option B is incorrect. Well, both answer option B and C are incorrect because they refer to the defendant's recklessness, which is actually completely irrelevant when you're talking about felony murder. And then answer option D referred to the officer's negligence in deciding to climb the ladder. Again, the officer's negligence won't be relevant to felony murder. So notice how these MBE style questions test your ability to apply legal rules and reasoning to the given facts. You need to be able to recall the legal rules, but that's not all. You actually have to be able to conduct a legal analysis in order to select the right answer option. Working through practice questions helps you hone this skill. We also have a key takeaway at the end of every question, as you can see here. The key takeaway is that under the traditional definition of felony murder, a death occurring during the commission of a predicate felony or the defendant's flight from the commission of a predicate felony constitutes felony murder. So this really helps you learn the law and self-assess. It also helps you figure out what a question was trying to get at. Sometimes MBE questions can seem really long and rambly and like there's a lot going on. Seeing the key takeaway can help you identify, this is actually what they were testing me on here. Okay, so time to launch another poll. Next, we're going to talk through the written portions of the bar exam. And we are just curious, which part of the bar are you most concerned about? The MBE or the written portion? All right, it looks like heavily we are getting the written portion. About 76% of you have said that you're more concerned about the written portion. So let's dive into that next. Okay, so some essay specific tips. The first one is to practice early and often. It can be really tempting when you start bar prep to feel like, oh, I don't know the rules well enough yet. I'm not going to write essays yet. But you really should get started as soon as you can. Don't put it off until you know the law better. It's okay to do open book essays when you are first starting out. You can move to closed book as you get more comfortable. As far as actually writing the essay, the first tip is to outline your answer. So take a minute to just organize the different points, address the questions in the order they're posed to you, and also take a minute to write in the rule statements. Structuring your answer like this beforehand is really going to help you calmly and clearly navigate the essay writing process instead of feeling like you're just running around. Another good tip is to follow a structure like IRAC, CRAC, or CREAC. Hopefully you learned one of these in school. Whatever one you like to use, just use it and stick to it. The bar exam graders don't have any preference between these structures. And, just kind of track the amount of time that you're spending in each of those elements as you're writing. If you're spending too much time in one of the elements, you're probably doing something wrong. And as a separate note, if you find CRAC or CREAC a little bit difficult to tackle, sometimes IRAC can be a little bit easier to start with. Also, in terms of organizing your answer, you should use headings. I think a lot of students think that this isn't allowed for some reason, but it totally is. And it makes the world a better place for you and for your grader. For you, it can help you be a little bit calmer as you go throughout because you can stay organized. For your grader, they really want to get through your answer as quickly as they can. So if you use headings, paragraph breaks, font variations to guide them throughout the answer, they'll be grateful. Finally, use specific facts in your application. So graders really focus on the application section. This is where the bulk of the points come in. they want to see you use specific facts from the fact pattern. Note that you shouldn't include a freestanding statement of facts at the beginning of the essay. This is a waste of time. You're not going to get any points for it. You should absolutely incorporate significant facts in your analysis. Don't skip on that. But dedicating an entire separate paragraph to a statement of facts is going to cause you to sacrifice time on things that would actually earn you points. So resist that temptation. Okay, now moving on to the performance test. The first tip here is just to practice. Don't underestimate how much practice you need on the performance test. Because you don't actually need to memorize any law for the performance test, some students think that they don't really need to prepare for it. Like, oh, I'll just go in and do what they ask me to. But that's so far from the truth. The performance test is deceptively difficult, so you really need to make sure you dedicate time to it consistently throughout your bar prep journey. You also want to make sure to master your plan of attack. So there's a strategy to how you read through the packet you're given. The packet is going to include a case file, which is the facts that you'll need, and a library, which is the law that you will need. There'll be a collection of statutes and case law normally. The most strategic way to go about this part is to skim the file first with those facts, then read the library intensively, take notes, and then reread the file intensively. That way you can figure out which facts are most important. You also want to outline as you go. So just as with essays, outlining your PT is crucial to writing in an organized manner and finishing on time, staying calm. But with a PT, many students actually outline as they read the packet instead of waiting until they've finished. You can bullet the rules that you'll need from the library, and then when you flip back to read the file the second time, you can actually just nest the corresponding facts below the rules. That way you're setting yourself up for a good structure. Next, you really want to make sure that you're following instructions. So the PT is going to give you a specific prompt for what type of product they want you to give. Sometimes they'll want you to write a memo to your boss. Sometimes they want you to write a brief to a judge or a letter to a client. Make sure you're sticking to whatever they ask for. That also includes using the proper tone. So some of those prompts are you want to use an objective tone for, some you want to use a persuasive tone. Stick to whatever tone you're assigned. And then make sure you address the assigned legal issues, of course. Also use headings. So as with essays, there are no rules about the tools that you use to organize your answer. You should utilize organizational tools to make it easy for the reader to navigate your writing. Write with headings, bold important words, use paragraph breaks strategically. And finally, make sure that you're engaging in good legal writing. The bar exam is no place to show off flowery language or complex diction. Good legal writing is straightforward and clear. Ask yourself when you're reviewing your practice PTs, would a person of reasonable intelligence with no prior knowledge of the law, would they get what I'm saying here? The answer should be yes. And if you have some really generous loved ones, you might even be able to ask them to read over your practice PTs and see if they get what's going on. All right, now for some exam day tips. So when you get to the day of the exam, hopefully you're well prepared, but there are still some things to keep in mind to help yourself be successful. The first one is to beat anxiety by getting excited. So test anxiety is extremely common. Interestingly, the best strategy for managing testing anxiety isn't actually to force yourself to calm down, but instead, recent research suggests that you can boost performance by translating anxious feelings into excitement. The reason for this is that both anxiety and excitement are highly activated states. So it's easier to shift your mentality from anxious to excited than from anxious to calm. Plus, getting excited has clear benefits. It's a positive emotion with the capacity to boost performance. Anxiety, on the other hand, is a negative emotion, which drains your brain's ability to process information. So I know this sounds really corny, but you want to tell yourself that you are excited to take the bar exam. That will help a lot. You also want to track your time. So for the essays and the performance test, they're going to give you, a bulk amount of time to complete all of it. And the proctor isn't actually going to call time between individual questions. So it's actually up to you to monitor time and make sure you're moving on to the next question in, the appropriate amount of time. You want to spend an equal amount of time on each essay and the performance test. For the MBE portion, Don't drive yourself crazy trying to time each and every question, but do give yourself some benchmarks. Your bar prep course will probably remind you of these, but at the 55-minute mark, you want to be to question 33. At 1 hour, 50 minutes, you want to be to question 66. And with 10 to 15 minutes left, you want to be at question 99. If you find yourself lagging, you need to pick up the pace, and don't spend too much time on any one question. They're all worth the same amount in your grade. So spending 5 minutes on a single question is not going to help your grade. And also you should feel free to skip questions if you need to. If it's taking you too long, or if a question feels overwhelming, it might feel like it's impossible at first blush. So don't waste time panicking, just move on to the next question. And when you've finished all the other questions, you can come back to anything you've skipped and give it a second pass. You may be a little bit calmer by then and remember more. In line with that, if you forget a rule on the bar exam, that's normal. That happens to everybody. If you're writing an essay and you forget a rule, it's a good idea to start with a portion of the essay that you feel confident in. Often the process of working through something you're more familiar with will help your brain calm down so that when you revisit the other question, you'll actually find yourself remembering the rule. But if you don't know a rule, hopefully this doesn't happen to you. Hopefully you've studied the law thoroughly enough so that you know all the rules somewhere in the back of your head. But if you truly don't, you know that you didn't ever study this, you can make your own rule. This is a last resort. Don't do this as plan A, but as plan Z, you can make your own rule. Use reason and create something that feels fair. You may not actually be that far off from the correct rule, and you will still pick up points if you analyze the right facts. Okay, let's talk about fatigue. So for many examinees, fatigue sets in during the afternoon session of the bar exam. Monitor your energy levels and pay attention to whether your reading comprehension is dropping. If you find that that is happening, then you can address it proactively. So a couple tips for that. The first thing is just kind of stretch your arms and inhale deeply, re-engage your body a little bit. You can also reset your visual focus by looking up at the ceiling and then looking back down at the bar exam. And finally, you can mark up the questions as you go. That might help keep you awake and alert if you are, keeping your pencil with you and circling important facts or things like that. And then finally, just for some, mindsets for success during bar prep. So first things first, mistakes are a part of learning. We talked about a growth mindset earlier. It's so important. There are going to be ups and downs throughout your bar prep journey. Maintain that growth mindset. If you make a mistake, that's okay. Mistakes are success in progress. In a similar vein, go for prepared, not perfect. The bar is a minimum competency exam. There's a mountain of material to learn. You should prioritize getting through every subject tested on the exam. Go for a good, not perfect understanding of the material. Try to give each subject equal attention and don't skip any subject. You're never going to know everything. I'm going to say it again because it's so important. It's just impossible. You're never going to know everything that could possibly be tested on the bar. And that is okay. You can just accept that now. You can still pass not knowing everything. If you're struggling with a rule or a subtopic, use your outlines and your resources to figure it out. If in the big picture it's a heavily tested topic, then yeah, dedicate some time to it. But if it's something obscure, don't waste your time on it. Know that you can still pass without knowing all of the little bitty ins and outs. Also, small steps. So the bar prep is a marathon. It's not a sprint. When the going gets tough, figure out how you can continue forward progress, break goals into smaller steps. For example, the goal of memorizing evidence might seem completely overwhelming, so try memorizing a smaller slice of the law, such as hearsay, to make the goal seem more doable. And then finally, just remember that you can pass. Bar exam is challenging, but trust that you can conquer it. Okay, so as promised, we're just going to do a super brief intro into Quimbee Bar Review Plus. At Quimbee, we offer a bar review course to prepare you for the bar exam. And like I mentioned before, we support all UVU jurisdictions plus California and Florida. Some of the features we have, we've developed our course using proven learning science. So learning theory is at the core of our mission, which is why it is that we design all of our materials to incorporate findings from over 100 years of educational psychology research. We're really interested in what works, and that's what we do. One way we incorporate learning science is through our illustrated video lessons in our signature Quimbee style. They're all 5 to 7 minutes long, and they have example-driven lessons to help you pass on the first try. And then finally, we also take a practice-based approach to bar prep with plenty of practice questions from past bar exams incorporated through full-length diagnostic exams, a simulated MBE, and also through practice essays and a performance test that you'll get feedback on from our licensed attorney graders to improve your writing performance over time. So if you do want to learn more about Quimbee Bar Review, a couple different options. You can schedule a free demo with myself or one of my colleagues by scanning this QR code. If you want to go ahead and enroll, you can also do that. It's really easy on our website. Or if you have questions, but you don't want to schedule a call, that's totally fine. You can email us at barprep@quimbee.com, and we can email you answers. We can take a recording of ourselves going through the course, whatever works best for you.
All right, thank you, Brenly. As we said, we're going to answer some of your questions here live. So if you have one, please put it in the Q&A feature. I see some of you are already doing that. Shannon and Deanna are going to be working as quick as they can behind the scenes to either respond to you directly or we'll respond to you live. And again, if we're not able to get to your question, you can email us and I'll put that contact information back up at the end here. But let's start with some questions that were submitted upon registration. The first one we got here was from somebody asking how they should divide their time between learning the law and doing practice questions. Should they wait to do practice questions? What do you think, Brenly?
Yeah, so this is a great question. I would say that the ideal setup is a bar review course that teaches you the law in small chunks and then has you practice along the way. Just like we said with essays, though, you definitely shouldn't wait to practice. You should try to practice as you go. That really helps you reinforce the materials and engage a little bit better.
Great. Okay, we have a specific question, but maybe some other people can relate. I can imagine, especially if you're taking the July bar and have a vacation for the summer. Someone is asking if they can start studying early so they can enjoy a vacation that's right in the middle of their bar prep schedule.
Yeah, totally. I think that actually applies to a lot of people. So it depends on the course that you pick. Some bar review courses don't really let you access the materials until, day one of the calendar. Here at Quimbee, we actually give you access as soon as you purchase, and you definitely can start early if you want to. Our course fully unlocks about a month before the official start date, but even before that formal unlocking date, you can access the course materials and get started.
Great, thank you. And then someone was asking about the current price for Quimbee Bar Review Plus. What is the pricing on that option?
Yeah, so normally Quimbee Bar Review Plus costs $20.99, so a little over $2,000. We're actually running a promotion right now. It goes for 7 more days. So next Friday is the last day to take advantage of this, but it's currently $15.99. A lot of people also have study aids credits saved up. Thanks to using study aids throughout law school, you should be able to see that on your account. That's up to $250, and that'll apply automatically in addition to the sales price. And then if you have any other questions about discounts, you can definitely contact us at barprep@quimbee.com. We'd be happy to point you to anything else that might be applicable.
Awesome, thank you. All right, next question we got was, do you use actual real fact patterns for the real bar exam? If not, who creates them and how do you ensure their effectiveness?
Yeah, this is a super good question. So we do. The way that license questions work is this. So the NCBE, they only release a certain number of questions each year. So at any given time, there's only like a fixed number of license questions out there in the universe. Right now, that number is about 1450, and we have included all of them in our Bar Review course. But believe it or not, even 1450 is not quite enough to get you ready for the bar exam. So we have authored questions of our own on top of that. We've authored about 2,000 on top of that. Our content team has a super rigorous question creation process where, they use the NCB's most current testing, like the way that they word things and stuff like that. And they also create questions that reflect the topics that the NCBE tests most frequently.
Great, thank you. We have someone asking, you talked about this at the top of the webinar, but can you talk about a little bit more, any effective studying or scheduling tips for someone who's working full-time during bar prep?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I would definitely recommend finding a part-time course. Trying to study full-time and work full-time at the same time is too much. So definitely find a part-time course. We offer one at no additional cost. And then as it's still going to be hard, of course, even with a part-time course, but it's definitely doable. Try to schedule specific times for yourself to study throughout the week. And then if you have extra time on weekends, use that time, to catch back up if you fall behind.
Great. Okay, let's see here. I think we have time for maybe 2 or 3 more questions. Okay, this one's interesting, maybe especially if someone's still early on in law school. How do I make sure I learn enough about courses on the bar that I will not take in law school? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. So the MBE subjects are usually required in law school, but then the subjects that come up on the essays, tons of students don't take those in law school. So I would say, first of all, don't be stressed about that. Don't be too worried. Any major reputable bar review course out there is going to have all the information that you need to know for these subjects. The only thing I will say is that often those subjects get treated later on in your bar review course. So just make sure you're keeping track on top of all your tasks and stuff. And if you find that you're going to start running out of time, then you may want to skip over some review days or some days of subjects that you're, more familiar with. Make sure you cover at least all the new learning material. And then if you have extra time at the end, go back and cover whatever you missed.
Okay, great. And then someone's asking, do you have any practical preparation and registration advice for the bar exam?
Yeah, so every state has different deadlines and requirements as far as registration goes. So I can't offer anything like specifically. You can always email us if you have specific questions, but a general rule of thumb is that you should start the process early. Most states, will ask a lot of questions about like places you've lived, jobs you've held, a lot of detailed stuff. It can be more time consuming than you would think to fill all that out. So my practical advice there is just start early.
Awesome. Okay, let's see here. Another question we got, or a couple questions around other opportunities that can help them study, whether it's one-on-one tutoring or other support that is out there for preparing for the bar. Is there any other tips around that you have?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say that for the most part, for most students, just using, a full dedicated bar review course from a major reputable company will be adequate. But some students do seek out one-on-one tutoring. That can be a little bit more on the expensive side. Here at Quimbee, we offer support throughout the course. So if you ever have a question come up, you can just email your bar review director and, they will either set up a meeting with you or respond to your questions via email. Some students also will use some, more supplemental bar review courses out there, like Adapt-A-Bar for MBE or Critical Pass for flashcards. I would just say, just make sure you're not overwhelming yourself with too much information, but there definitely are tons of opportunities out there if you know that something fits with your specific learning style a little bit better.
Okay, great. And then I think this might be a good question to end things on as we're hitting our time. But any final general recommendations on managing immense stress during bar prep?
Yeah, it is hard. I think the first thing to acknowledge is that like it's hard and that's okay. But the second thing I would say, which is just as important, is picking a bar prep course that matches your learning style. So we kind of talked about this in the slides, but it's going to be so much easier to show up every day and complete tasks if doing so doesn't make you feel absolutely miserable and, ineffective. So, and, also just remember what we talked about with the growth mindset. Your performance is going to improve naturally as you continue to show up. So just pick a course that makes it easy for you to do that, and remind yourself that there's hope if you ever start to feel like you're not doing quite as well as you wanted. And then also we talked about like burnout too, but if you feel like you're starting to reach the point of burnout, take some time off, do whatever you need to do to rejuvenate yourself. Trying to move forward when you just can't is not going to be helpful in any way.
All right, thank you, Brenly. We are going to wrap things up there as we are hitting our time. I know there was a lot of questions in the Q&A. Again, if we did not get to them, you can reach out to us anytime at that barprep@quimbee.com email. We will get back to you within 2 business days there. And as Brenly mentioned as well, you can always coordinate a time to meet with Brenly or another one of our bar review directors to get more of your one-on-one questions answered. If you have any other questions or just want to take your own time researching, you can click around quimbee.com to learn more. You can always book a demo just directly there without having to email us, where we can answer your personalized questions for you. And as Brenly mentioned, maybe let you know about any promotional pricing available just to you. We will be posting the recording of this webinar. I know I saw a few people asking about getting this presentation. It will be emailed to you next week, so look out for that in your email inbox and feel free to share it with any friends that are also preparing for the bar. But thank you so much for attending today. Thank you, Brenly, for presenting. We hope you have a great rest of your day and best of luck preparing for the bar exam.